Hello, I'm Ina and this is Know Thyself. And it's been a minute. Yeah, I was gonna post regularly throughout January, but the month just kind of flew by. Yeah, this month has gone by really quickly, hasn't it? I've been in a bit of a slump, content creation wise, in case you couldn't tell. So I've not really been in the mood to film anything. I've just kind of been a bit anxious about it, and yeah, I just haven't had the motivation or the drive to really do anything. Like, I've had ideas, I don't know. And like I said, this month has just flown by, and I've been busy with other things, really. So anyway, excuses aside, I really wanted to jump on the bandwagon. I wanted to do a VR response, or well, a VR response, a VR to Kay over at Amidst the Grey, and her wonderful tag, Coffee House Decks. And I did actually see this video when it, shortly after it came out, I did actually discover her channel through this video back in December. And I thought to myself, I put that on my list, and I thought to myself, this is a video I need to make. Because I was already like, okay, that's it. I'm taking a break for the rest of the year. I'm not posting any videos. So I did, this was like the first video that was on my list, on my to-do list. And yeah, like I said, things just kind of got in the way. And I'm a little bit late to this, but better late than never, right? So, great tag. I have my cup of coffee, but I've already drunk all of it. So, and this is pretty much my philosophy. But yeah, I drank all my coffee already. Whoops. But yeah, I love coffee. I don't know shit about coffee though. That's the only problem. I can tell if a coffee is good, I just don't really have any preferences. Like, I'm not one of those people that get like really specific about their coffee orders. Like, oh yeah, I'll have like 2 espresso shots, 2 pumps vanilla and cinnamon sugar, I don't know, creamer, whatever, you know, sprinkles on top. Firstly, I don't really drink at Starbucks, and secondly, I'm not fussy about my coffee. As long as it's coffee, it's good. That's all I need. As long as it's coffee, it's good to me. So I don't really know much about the specifics of coffee making, or I mean, I guess I know enough to know what all these different coffees, most of these coffees in this tag are, but I don't really have any preferences. I'd say maybe I'd go for a latte, or a cappuccino. Rarely go for espresso because I get really jittery. But yeah, I'd say those are my go-tos. Actually, I go for cortado as well. And I'm really glad that Kay included that in the tag. So those are like my 3 go-tos, but I'm not really fussy about the details. I kind of wish I was. I wish I was a coffee connoisseur. I'm not, so I haven't done the research. I really recommend you check out, if you haven't already, some of the other videos in this tag, because some of the people have really put like a lot of work into this and done their research, actually gone into how these different coffees are made and kind of incorporated that into like deciding what decks they would pick for each one. I haven't. I've just kind of gone with my gut instinct. So if you're into that, you're into hearing the opinions of someone who loves coffee but doesn't know anything about coffee, well, this video is for you. So let's just get into the video. Yeah, so for some of these prompts, I guess I cheated. I just couldn't pick just one, because I thought for a few of these, a couple fit the parameters, the guidelines, I guess. and I couldn't really pick between them. And I don't really have a large collection, so if you've been on my channel before, you're gonna see a lot of repeats. Hopefully that's okay with you. If you haven't been, if you're new here, then great. If not, you know, you're gonna see some decks that I've shown before, but who cares? Well, the first one, I do actually have 2 decks, and I've chosen them for, I think they both fit, but in slightly different ways. I think there's some nuance in this. So I'll explain why I chose both of these. The first prompt is the Espresso Shot, a deck that's strong, punchy, and gets straight to the point. So 2 decks, very different approaches, but I think they both get to the point. They just go about it in a different way. So first up is I have it in its own little box, so you're not going to be able to tell what tarot this is unless I show it. The Everyday Tarot. This is a cheap little deck. It's very affordable, very accessible. And it's tiny, which I think fits the prompt, doesn't it? Because the espressos are tiny little things. So in that sense, I think this is the perfect espresso shot deck. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith, so I think that kind of speaks for itself. It gets straight to the point. But this one particularly, because it's vectorized art, it's really distilled, right? So you get the message. You get the message loud and clear. At least I do. I'm in my head, this deck has a really surgically precise voice. It doesn't mess around. It gets straight to the point. You know, no like sprinkles on top. It gives you the info you need to hear, and it doesn't elaborate. It doesn't like dress it, I guess is the word I want. Dress it. Yeah, it doesn't dress the information up. It's strong, punchy. And because I guess it's because of the art style, it is like very simplified. You know, you kind of, I don't know, I guess some of the Rider-Waite-Smith symbolism is not here, or at least it's been like condensed, right? It's been represented in a very simple way. I think, I mean, this is a great beginner deck. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this deck, because it is the one that is associated with Biddy Tarot, and I know a lot of people have used Biddy Tarot to learn to read tarot. So this, I think it's just very intuitive. They feel like flashcards. I think they feel like vectorized flashcards. So I think that's kind of how it gets straight to the point. It's just the message is very plain, very easy to see. There's kind of like no mistaking what the deck is telling you. It's, you know, it's just classic imagery, but very simplified. I don't know what else can I say about it. Although I'm not a fan of the Three of Swords being depicted in this way, I do love this Three of Swords. I do love it. So yeah, that's one that's one of my espresso decks, because like I said, it's very blunt. It gets there at like yeah, it just delivers the message in a really straightforward way. So that's one of my picks. And then my other pick, for a slightly different reason. Also, You know, I actually don't like gilding, but I really like the matte gilding on this. And oh yeah, also I do use this for clients a lot because it's small. It's very easy to do like tableaus with it, you know, 9-card spreads. It's, you know, I can bring it around with me. It's, you know, it's just very easy to carry around with me on me. I like mini decks for that. So I do like using this for clients, for other people. And because sometimes I just really need to get the message across like really clearly and concisely, and this is great for that. I think people who aren't really familiar with tarot can look at it and kind of get the gist of it, right? So that is my espresso shots. In terms of tarot, now in terms of oracle, I do have an oracle deck that I think fits the profile of the espresso shot, but it's different because it's not like punchy, it's not like blunt exactly, but it does get straight to the point. It doesn't beat around the bush, and it actually has really, really great messages. In fact, it's an oracle deck where you don't really have to think about the message too much or like interpret it. Like it's just, it gives you a message and that's it. And you know, that's your takeaway. You don't have to interpret it too much. The guidebook does go into the message in a little bit more, in more detail, but it's also very straightforward, the guidebook. And I feel like it's energizing, and that is probably the most important aspect of an espresso, is it not? It's really energizing. Don't have to overthink it, etc., etc. And that would be the daily crystal inspiration. So like I said, it's not like, you know, it's not like blunt, rude. Like I've seen some people kind of interpreting the espresso shot as like a slightly kind of rude deck. But I don't see it that way. And this does energize me. Like sometimes I just don't want to think. I need a deck to think for me, and I need some advice. I need some simple advice, some simple phrases. With keywords, I feel like if it's just a single keyword, I actually have to interpret the keyword, you know, relate it to something. Whereas if it has like an actual message, that for me is like, that for me is more direct than a single keyword. So, you know, I mean, it is blunt, but it's not blunt, like I said, in a rude way. It just tells you what you need to know. Like, it's energizing. It's actually quite perky. But yeah, so for example, Jade, be the bigger person. The messages are right there. Fluorite, find peace within. Golden Healer Quartz, open the door. And I don't know if I know how to say this, rhodochrosite, remember your worth. That's a great message. Take action. Wow, that is the perfect example of like an espresso shot deck, right? Overcome your fears. So yeah, this for me, and also the imagery, because it's so pared down, it's literally just crystal photography. It catches your eye, gets your attention immediately. You know what you're looking at. You don't have to overthink it. It's just the crystal, the name, the phrase, the key phrase, and you got your message for the day, and you're good to go. I really do pull this daily, honestly, and this is one of my most, like, my go-to deck for like daily messages, more so than any other deck, because it's just so direct and it gives me very practical advice. I think that is an important aspect of an espresso. It's practical. So it's not woo, you know, as you might think a crystal deck would be. No, it's very, very down to earth. And I like that about this deck. Clear the clutter. Get crystal clear. Yeah, this deck is crystal clear about the messages. It doesn't mess around. But it's not like mean about it, you know? It's just, I don't know. And that's why I think it's like energizing. It gives you like a little boost, right? A little jolt of energy. And it's just something you might want to incorporate into your daily routine. Like, a lot of people do take espresso shots regularly. I don't. I'm not one of those people. I can't handle it. But yeah, I know a lot of people do incorporate espresso into their kind of like daily routine. So this is a great deck for that. So yeah, those are my 2 espresso shot decks. So next up we have the Drip, a deck that's simple, accessible, and gets the job done. So for this one, I thought, you know, the obvious choice was the Rider-Waite-Smith. But I don't want to be boring. No offense. I don't want to be predictable. But I did think of a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck, so a Rider-Waite-Smith clone-ish. So, you know, it doesn't stray too far from the classic imagery and the classic meanings, but it is very accessible. And I'd argue that it's kind of a hybrid, because I would argue this deck for me is also a cafe latte. It's very approachable. It's very palatable. I think it's well liked. At least I think anyone can really get along with this deck. Yeah, and it's the Pagan Cats Tarot. These are the backs. So yeah, it's it does take some creative liberties with the imagery. So it's not a straight up Rider-Waite-Smith clone, but it is Rider-Waite-Smith based. I love these cats so much. I do love the imagery. It doesn't bore me because, again, like I said, it does take some creative liberties, you know. Obviously it's a cat-based deck. Oh, this Queen of Pentacles. Love, 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 love. So yeah, I think, oh, it's just so sweet. This deck is actually, for me, is really sweet. It always gives me the nicest messages. Like, even when I get difficult, challenging cards, I can't help myself. Like, I can't help but be like, aw, you know, it's not so bad. And I've been using this deck quite a lot recently. I did get this is a recent acquisition. This was a gift from a friend. So I've been using this a lot, and I've just been really enjoying it. I've actually been enjoying using a Rider-Waite-Smith. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, I like how simple it is. I don't need to overthink it. So it's like the espresso, but it's also just gentler, right? It's a little bit more mellow. And this is a mass market deck. This is a low Scarabeo deck, so it's very accessible. It's very affordable. And yeah, I think it's very hard to get upset at these cards. Like, I just can't see anyone getting, like, whatever the message is, even if it's a slightly more harder message, which this deck doesn't really give, honestly. But even so, you can't be put off by cats. right? Even if you're not much of a cat person, it is like endearing and sweet. So it doesn't stray so much from the Rider-Waite-Smith that you won't have a clue as to how to interpret it. You can very easily interpret it. It strays just enough that the imagery is like, it makes sense, right? It fits with the theme, but it's not like, it's not a straight up clone, but it's recognized, like the images are easy enough to understand and like recognizable enough that you'll have no, like if you know the Rider-Waite-Smith, you'll have no problem reading this deck. So it is accessible. And just the images aren't harsh or anything. I think it's appropriate for like all ages as well. There aren't really any, even the Ten of Swords in this deck, I don't know if I already, yeah, the Ten of Swords in this deck even, oh, this Empress is gorgeous, gorgeous. But even the Ten of Swords in this deck doesn't feature, so I think it's the only card that doesn't feature a cat, at least not embodied, like in physical form. Again, you know, like how when people see the Ten of Swords and get scared, and you know, you kind of have to be like, no, it's not, it's not always necessarily that bad. Well, this card kind of already takes the, kind of does the legwork for you. Like it is, you see it and it's not as scary or challenging. It already is quite, it implies that there's hope. Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to deal with seeing a cat stabbed 10 times. I honestly don't think I'd be able to deal with that. So it's good that they didn't go down that route. So yeah, it's actually a more positive spin. So yeah, accessible, yeah, check. It's relatable. If you're a cat, then yes, check. Definitely relatable. Even the tower is kind of funny. It's funny. It's not even that terrifying. I don't know. I just love seeing the different varieties of cats, and I think obviously this deck will do well if you're a cat person, but even if you're not, I'm not particularly a cat person actually. Like I do love cats, but I wouldn't call myself a cat person, and yet I love this deck. I love this deck. This deck is like my best friend. It's so sweet. So yeah, this for me would be my drip coffee, the Pagan Cat Tarot. Okay, so the next prompt is the Pour-Over, a deck you need to take your time with, but totally worth the effort. And I've gone for another bit of an obvious choice here. Yeah, it's a Thoth. But I really do think that this deck has a bit of a stiff upper lip, right? It demands you take your time with it, or it just won't give you the answers. Like, it's not, I don't know, it's iconic. I mean, of course it's iconic, but it really does demand you take the time to study it. And I think that is what's most rewarding about the Thoth, actually studying it. I think studying it is one of the best parts about the Thoth. And okay, some people would argue that's actually the worst part because it's not as accessible as the Waite-Smith. And you know, you kind of have to, you do really have to think a bit more, and it's, you know, it's kind of pretentious, it's a little bit brainy. I think anyone can read with the Thoth. I don't think it's as scary or imposing as it might seem at first glance. I think it tries to give off that, you know, I'm personifying it, but it does give that impression. But I think it's so worth studying this deck. I really do, because it teaches you so much about tarot, teaches you about Kabbalah, teaches you about numerology and astrology. I've been really enjoying using this deck for my deacon walk. Yeah, this is actually more of a study deck for me. I don't pull this out very often, but sometimes when I want like, okay, when I want kind of like a more metaphysical answer, I'll be like, okay, what's the sitch here? What's like, what is going on metaphysically? What's the energy? I'll pull out this deck so I can get a more profound answer, and I'll really dive into the symbolism. I'll really you know, this is the kind of deck where I'll look at it and I'll be like, okay, so yeah, this is taking the shape of the tree of life. Okay, so it's Mars in Pisces. What does Mars in Pisces mean? This is the third decan of Pisces. What does that mean? You know, what does the rose mean? The colors used is something that, when it's like the way you're supposed to read it, you know, not to be like gatekeepery, but the way you're supposed to read it is, in my opinion, the way that is most satisfying to read it. It, like, if you do take your time, if you appreciate the images, of course, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. And I don't think it's like superior or anything. I don't think there is any superior system. I just think it's a matter of taste. So, you know, if it's up your alley, then I think it is well worth the effort. You know, it's annoying. I love this death card. I think this is one of my favorite death cards in any deck. This was actually, I think, this was the first card I ever saw from a Thoth deck. So that I might be biased because of that, and also because I'm a Scorpio, but it is beautiful. So that's my pick for the pour-over. I love this Aeon / universe / the world card. I do love this. So yeah, a bit of an obvious choice, but I mean, it's an obvious choice for a reason, right? So yeah, that would be my pour-over deck. So the next prompt is the CAFE LATTE, a deck that's well received and highly palatable. So for this one, I thought, my first thought was the Housewives Tarot. So this is the box. Very iconic. I do think this is one of the more popular decks. I don't see it as much these days, but I do know it's an old classic. Yeah, this is palatable in the sense that it makes tarot palatable. It makes it seem kind of even superfluous at times, like very mundane, you know. I think that's kind of the point. So it's great for like mundane kind of everyday readings. You don't really need to overthink it too much. So there aren't many, I don't think there are really any like challenging cards in here. So I don't know, even like, I don't know, that just, it's like very humorous. It's a very cheeky deck. So I don't know, even like the more challenging cards are just, they're just funny, I guess. I mean, it's meant to be like tongue-in-cheek. I love this devil card. And, you know, it's a bit like ironic. It sticks with the theme. The theme is kind of like ironic. It isn't afraid to like poke fun at the theme. Just make it really kind of lighthearted and not serious. This would be a good like choice, a good pick for one of the later prompts, but I think more so it fits with this deck fits with the CAFE LATTE. It's just it's very easy. It just goes down easy, I think. It makes the tarot easy, like non-esoteric, non-threatening. If the deck was a cafe latte, this would be it, in my opinion. This is a cafe latte in deck form. It's just like, it is silly, it doesn't take itself seriously, but also it's like anyone can pick this up. Is it a beginner deck? I don't know if I'd argue that, like, I don't know if I'd say this is a beginner deck exactly, but it is very, it is beginner friendly, and it is just friendly in general, like for people to, I'm making such a mess, for people to look at. It's non-threatening, like I said, right? So the Wheel of Fortune, it's gambling, it's a roulette. So yeah, I think it's palatable in that sense. It's not challenging. It's popular for a reason. It's well loved. Goes down the hatch. Yeah. I just think this is like, yeah, I just think this is a very palatable deck. Because even with the Rider-Waite-Smith, right, there are some challenging cards. And I know that there's already kind of like, I mean, less and less so, you know, we are working to destigmatize tarot as a community, but I think the Waite-Smith, to a larger audience that doesn't know much about tarot, is still associated with, you know, like, I don't know, just really stupid stuff that doesn't really make sense. You know, those videos that are going around that are like, why I stopped getting tarot readings, that are like, oh, it connected me with like a dark portal and like demons came through. It's just cards, right? But yeah, I think the Waite-Smith still has a bit of a reputation, right? So like for us, it's very mellow, but for people outside of the tarot community, I think it still has a bit of a reputation. So this would be a good deck to show someone who isn't familiar with tarot and, you know, won't easily offend, right? It's kind of non-offensive, I guess. It's very hard to look at these cards and think, okay, Satan is gonna try and like steal my soul or whatever. I don't know what they're saying through these cards, right? This is gonna, this is like, these cards have some seriously bad juju. They're gonna bring in some really dark, they're gonna bring in some really dark energies into my life. I don't think anyone will see this deck and think that. It's just, it doesn't take itself seriously. So that's my pick for the Cafe Latte, the Housewives Tarot. Our next prompt is the Cappuccino, a deck that's classic, sophisticated, and maybe a bit fussy. So for that, I don't know, I have a few decks that fit that profile. But ultimately I decided to go with the Golden Tarot, and this is the one that is just a reproduction of the Visconti Sforza, because I know there's a few Golden Tarots, so I just want to clarify. This is the Visconti Sforza. So is it a classic? Yes, it's absolutely a classic. I mean, it's the definition of classic, right? This is one of the first tarot decks that at least one of the first surviving tarot decks. I know there are some older decks, but this really, as far as we know, right, in terms of tarot history, it was probably taken from card games that were available at the time. So it's not like I'm arguing it's completely original. I know the tarot goes kind of goes further back than that. But I do think it is classic in that sense. Like, I interpreted classic in a very literal sense, as you can see. It's classic. It's from the Renaissance. And I think some of these images are quite iconic and, yeah, and classy, right? It's classy. It's very, I mean, of course, because this was made for a ruling class. This is made for nobility, so of course it would be classy. But it's fussy. It's fussy because, again, it's a pip deck. It's a beautiful pip deck, in my opinion. Gorgeous. But, you know, in terms of pip decks, it's one of those that, you know, kind of like a Marseille, it doesn't, to an untrained eye, you know, to someone who doesn't know tarot or is just getting into tarot, this would be a challenging deck to read with, I think, because the pips don't really give much in the way of, you know, indicating what they might be about, because of course this was a card game, it wasn't necessarily meant for divination. So, you know, it's a pipsy deck, and not everyone is into pipsy decks, so it's fussy in that sense. But also, the main reason I say it's fussy, right? Now, I do have another deck that I'm including in this VR that has the same problem, but this one I think fit the profile better in terms of like fussy. Just to hold myself accountable, this isn't the only deck in my collection that has this issue. So, and it's not the only one I'm going to show today. But, you know, just because of how it is, what it, you know, the whole history behind it, I'd say this is more of a cappuccino than anything else. So here's why it's fussy. It's huge. It's massive. It's bigger than my hand. I can't really shuffle it. It's got like a very stiff cardstock. I can just barely, no, see, I can't even, my fingers can touch the ends of the card, of each card, but I can't riffle shuffle it. And that for me is a big deterrent, and like I don't use this deck very much. I kind of just have it more for like collection's sake and like historical purposes, and because I really like the imagery. I might get that version, which is like a mini. I think that would make this deck a lot easier to work with, but I can't, I can't riffle shuffle it. I can't even sideways shuffle it. So it's, no, because see, like, look, I can't. It would require me to bend the cards, and I don't think that's, I can't. So all I can do really is kind of shuffle it this way. And this isn't really my favorite way of shuffling. This isn't my preferred way of shuffling. So it's very chunky, it's big, it's a little bit obnoxious in that way. Like, it demands to be seen. It's like, here I am. But that's kind of makes it hard to work with, so it is a bit fussy. It's like, you know, if you want to work with me, then you're gonna have to be willing to put up with, you know, like, you're gonna have to love me at my worst if you want to have me at my best, kind of thing. You know, that that whole saying. Yeah, you don't deserve me at my best if you can't handle me at my worst. That thing. So this really isn't my preferred way of shuffling. I can shuffle it, but it's just not, it's, ugh, you know. So I don't bring it out that much as I'd love to bring it out more. I kind of don't because of that. But it is beautiful. It's very classy and classic. Oh, one of my favorite devil cards in a historical deck. Although I do like the Marseille devil cards, the different Marseille devil cards more than, but this is gorgeous. I think this is really beautiful. I love it. Yeah, so that was the Golden Tarot, the Visconti Sforza. It's a reproduction of the Visconti Sforza. So that would be my cappuccino. That would be my cappuccino deck. Okay, so the next prompt is the MOCHA, a deck that's rich, indulgent, and a bit extra. I don't have many indie decks actually in my collection, so I'm not used to this kind of like excessive pageantry. I don't know, you know, like this, I don't know. You'll get what I mean when I show you it. Yeah, so the deck I chose for this prompt is the Botanica Tarot. And this isn't, well, this was an indie deck. I believe it's now mass market. So I did get it mass market, but even as the mass market edition, so it doesn't come with like the big book, but even the mass market edition comes with all this extra stuff. So it comes with a little booklet, which is, it's like fine. It's, you know, it's enough. But it does come with like the postcards, these like really beautiful postcards. Comes on the same stock as the deck. So these are like, as far as postcards go, these are amazing. You know, even this, like, come on, you don't get this very often. And then it came with some stickers, which I put on my journal. And it came with this patch. I still yet to decide where I'm going to put this, but it's in there for the meantime. And this really beautiful charm. It's really gorgeous. Again, still yet to decide what I'm going to do with that. So it's extra in, you know, it's a little bit decadent. It's not the only deck in my collection that has gilding. I wouldn't say that's the definition of like decadent, because so many decks have gilding now that it's insane. It's kind of excessive and I don't like it. But that is just an extra. You know, the box is like black and gold and it has these like, I wouldn't say like engravings, but you know what I mean. It has like, oh yeah, that's the thing about this deck. So it has like, you see this design here, the back of the cards. It's okay, it's gorgeous, but it actually, you can actually like see it, you can feel it through the other side, because it's actually like, engraved isn't the word, but I can't think of the word right now. It's not in my vocabulary. It's like stamped or something. So you can actually kind of see, I don't know if I'm showing it, but you can kind of see the design. You can feel it kind of. So it is a bit extra in that sense. Like, you know, that wasn't necessary, but they went with that, and okay, I respect that choice. It's gorgeous. I love it anyway. I love this deck. I'm not complaining, but it is, you know, very extra. And it's also extra in the sense that like, okay, this it's not an easy deck to read with. I recognize the cards, like that's not an issue. I recognize the symbols, so this would be the Magician. And then we have for like the minors, we have the number and then the suit symbol. So we have, this is the coins with the pentacles and then the 10 in Roman numerals. So once you get used to that, it's pretty easy, pretty intuitive. But that is a stumbling block. And then the second stumbling block is that although it is gorgeous, it's really hard to read with this deck because of the because if you're not familiar with like florography or like floral language or like herbalism, this deck is it's a hard one. It's a hard one to decipher because it's like, do I just read it like any other deck, like a Waite-Smith, and just kind of ignore the flowers, the meanings, the additional kind of like nuances of the plants? Or do I actually try and incorporate them? Do I try and incorporate that aspect into my readings? So this one's one that's tricky for me to read with, because not only the plants have provide additional meaning, they also, the creator of this deck also kind of included like historical artifacts, weapons, you know, like stuff that is actually, you know, like crowns, tiaras, you know, from different civilizations and different cultures, spanning history. And yeah, if you're not, you know, if you're not familiar with that either, then it kind of goes over your head. Like, the guidebook does explain what they are, but it doesn't kind of give context for why he chose like those specific, like why he chose this type of sword for the Ace of Swords. Sometimes it does slightly try and explain it in the guidebook, but you know, it's very like why this coin? Like, why this kind of currency for the Six of Coins, the Six of Pentacles? It doesn't really go into that. And there is a meaning, there is a, like, it was very obviously consciously chosen. All of these were very deliberately thought out. So it's kind of a waste not to read this with like the additional nuances of, you know, everything that it has kind of like layered on top. So the herbalism and the cultural, geographical context. But it's beautiful, so I don't really care, I guess. I mean, I do care, but it's just a trickier one to read with. It's one that, again, it might also fit the profile for a pour over, because it's, you know, you really do have to take your time to get to know it, to understand it. You really have to study like a couple of things, a few things to really get the meatiness of, like, really get the most out of this deck, right? So it is a bit extra in that sense, but I don't know. Like, maybe this is a really dumb question, but I'm putting this out there. Why was the magnolia chosen for the Empress? Maybe that's a really dumb question, but why was the magnolia specifically chosen for the Empress? I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. I'm just saying that I don't know enough about floral language to understand why this was picked for the Empress, right? So yeah, it's a little hard to read with, but again, you can choose to read it just like a Waite-Smith. You don't have to incorporate any of the additional meanings into it. But I just think there'd be no point in reading this deck if you don't, you know? You can, you don't have to. I mean, this does require study. But again, it's no Thoth, right? You can still read with it. You can still read with it. Like, this is the Hierophant, the Knight of Cups. You can read it just like any other deck. But it goes the extra mile. Right, you want to go the extra mile with this deck. It makes you want to go the extra mile. So yeah, and it's pretty. It's so shiny. Yeah, so I'd say this is my pick for the Mocha. Okay, so next up we have The Cortado, or Cortado, as it's supposed to be pronounced. A deck that's balanced and objective. So I would go for Marseille, and this is kind of Marseille. It's more of a pip deck, but you know, it's not really a classic Marseille. I do have a somewhat classic Marseille, but I think this deck kind of, in terms of like its voice, I'd say this is the most neutral deck in my collection. Its voice is just completely unbiased. It just feels kind of detached almost. So it's not going to take sides, right? Again, I would show my Marseille, but I really do think this was a better choice. So for the Cortado, I would pick the Jonas. So again, it is based on the Marseille. It's relies very heavily on numerology, but I don't know, for me it just feels so neutral. It reads very neutrally for me. It just doesn't, it's so unbiased. I don't know, does anyone else have that experience with this deck? It feels like a little bit detached, you know? It doesn't feel overly emotional. It's beautiful, but it just kind of is very objective, I think. Because it's so pippish in some of the cards. And it doesn't really kind of like, it is expressive, but in a kind of like subdued way. So, right, like it is definitely expressive. It is, you know, these are pips with feelings, right? They're illustrated pips anyway. But, you know, with like the flowers and such, it just like, I feel like it's kind of like, I don't have the Wild Unknown, but I imagine this is probably, for me, it's kind of like what the Wild Unknown probably reads like, the Yunasa Yaus, because of, you know, it's so, I don't know, like this is the Eight of Cups, right? Okay, I see it, but with the numerology involved, the meanings can actually change. So they're flexible. So it's a flexible deck. It's neutral in that sense because it's flexible. But you know, sometimes I just don't get it. Like even if I apply numerology and, you know, elemental associations, I still, just from the image alone, I don't really get like a strong reaction or a strong answer one way or another. So it does have its own language, I think. It is like I said, it is expressive, but it's just in a very kind of like introverted kind of way. So that's what makes this very impartial, very neutral, very unbiased, I think. I don't know. Like, for example, this 10 of Wands obviously does look like a burden, but you could read this differently, you know? I don't know. It's a beautiful deck. I'm so glad I have it. I'm so glad I bought it. But again, its voice for me is very, 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 like, a bit distant. Yeah, like not bothered by anything. You know, whatever I throw at it, it'll just give me an answer, kind of like, okay, well, you know, here you go. you know, try and interpret this in however you want, really. I'm not gonna steer you in any particular direction, so just go with it. That's how I see this deck. This is a great full. It's very different, but it's a great full card. So that's my pick for the Cortado. Okay, so the Con Panna, a deck that puts you in your place but with a hint of sweetness. For me, this was an obvious choice. The MATCHA LATTE. Yeah, the mini, because that's the only one I have. I carry this around with me because I'm crazy like that. I just need it on the go. But yeah, I think this is an obvious choice. A lot of people use this for shadow work, myself included, for like inner child work. And yeah, it is a little bit biting, a little bit, not sinister is the word, but you know, it's like something, I don't know, like something isn't quite right. But I personally don't find this to be like a threatening deck or like a scary deck. I actually think it's cute. But that's why I think it's, you know, it's sweet, but it is like a little bit biting. I don't know if I have much to say about this deck, but I love it. Actually, I feel like the less I have to say about a deck, the more I love it. It's weird, like, I don't know. I love this. And this Queen of Wands. Oh, and this King of Wands, yes. So yeah, it's like something's a little bit off. It does put you in your place. It does trigger stuff sometimes. Like, it can be triggering. So yeah, I think it doesn't, even though it looks like it might, you know, looks can be deceiving, but it doesn't sugarcoat things at all. It definitely doesn't sugarcoat things. But it looks like a deck that would sugarcoat things, right? Maybe. You know, it's all like pastel colors and doll faces, but it's quite harsh at times. It's very truthful. It's can be blunt at times. So these remind me of, this card always reminds me of the twins from The Shining. And I love it. I love it. So yeah, that's my Con Panna. The Nicoletta Ciccoli. So next we have the Chai Latte, a deck that's warm, cozy, and nurturing. And this is another one where I couldn't pick just one. So I picked two for slightly different reasons. I don't actually have, I realized when I was preparing this VR that I don't actually have many decks that are like warm, like have like very warm tones, which is interesting because I mean, I do have a few, but I kind of would have thought that I would have more, but I don't. I feel like it was kind of tricky for me to pick this one. I mean, the one I'm going to show you is quite an obvious choice, I think, but it was tricky because I didn't have like decks that felt like warm, like warm toned, like kind of like cozy, autumnal, kind of that's kind of the vibe I get from a chai latte. I don't really have any decks that fit that profile. So I chose the nicest decks I have, like the most cuddly decks I have. And those would be the Gateway Oracle cards and the Carrot cards. This is a newer acquisition. But yeah, in terms of like, I'll show you the Gateway Oracle cards first. I think most people are familiar with Denise Linn and her decks, but this is such a like, if I had to give this deck a sign, I'd give it Cancer. Not to be like predictable, but oh, it's just, oh. When I see this, I just melt because it's one of those decks that also does connect me to my inner child. So I think that's probably why it feels so warm. But it just feels like a hug. Like I can come to this deck. I don't actually use this deck a lot, but I know it's there for me, like when I need it. And it does its job. Like, I don't know, it's kind of motherly. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I really do actually like the images. They really remind me of illustrations from my childhood. So it connects me to that as well. But it just feels, it is very nurturing. It's very nurturing. That's kind of the whole purpose of this deck, I think. It's supposed to be nurturing. Yeah, it just makes me, it just melts my little black heart. It gets through to me. It knows me. It doesn't ask much of me. It always wants the best for me. So yeah, I'd say this is my chai latte. And then also, oh, this always happens because I spread out the cards so much that I end up having like trouble getting them back together. But so my other pick was it has a slightly different vibe, but the Carrot cards. Oh, I love this deck so much already. It's just because I love rabbits, really, that this feels nurturing for me. This feels warm and inviting. It's just because I just think it's really, really cute. Yeah, I don't see this one. It's a newer one, I think. It's a newer deck on the market, I mean. It is mass market. So I haven't seen it around that much. I think I've seen it in one video, but I'm really glad it exists. It's actually a really, really good Oracle deck. It's actually quite intuitive. I do sometimes refer to like the little leaflet, little white book, but I don't have to, because even looking at the images, I get a sense of what they mean. It's like I get into the headspace of a rabbit and I get it, you know. I just understand it, and it's just, oh, it's so cute. It's so cute. It's so sweet. It's so simple. It's so like pared down that it feels, yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a really warm deck, but it does feel soft, I think is the point. It feels really soft. Oh, this is my favorite card, the babies. I love like bunnies, rabbits, and this was the perfect deck for me because I'm bunny obsessed. I love rabbits. So sorry again if you hear any like background noise, the usual, you know, like cars zooming. Yeah. Anyway, next we have the Matcha Latte, a deck that's an acquired taste or a bit unconventional. And that for me immediately what came to mind was the Surrealist Tarot. So it is an acquired taste because, well, you know, for obvious reasons, I think. But for me, like, even when I saw this for the very first time, I thought it was just a Rene Magritte tarot, like a Rene Magritte themed tarot. And I thought, well, I do like Rene Magritte, but I don't know if I'd like a whole tarot based around Magritte's work. I don't know how I don't know. I don't know if that's kind of like my bag, but I'm so glad I did actually watch walkthroughs of this, because then I quickly discovered that this is actually an amazing deck. But it is an acquired taste for sure. It's very, let's just say you wouldn't read it like you would any other deck. It's very unconventional. I think it reads more like an oracle, right? Because it's more like intuitive. Really, sometimes the standard definitions just go straight out the window. And if you read the little white book that comes with it, it's even more like puzzling and enigmatic. I don't know, it's just some of the meanings that it gives are just so bizarre, and of course that's very fitting for this deck. But yeah, it is, I guess it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And even for me at the beginning, it was hard to, even though I really liked it, I was really drawn to it. This is probably my favorite card in the deck. And this one, which is depicts Remedios Varo. Great surrealist artist. But yeah, even for me, this was hard to wrap my head around, and it still is. It still puzzles me. And you know, that's the point. It's not, it defies logic. It's supposed to defy logic. I think there's probably a mistake approaching this deck like any other deck, or like a traditional tarot in any sense of the word. It really isn't. You read what you see. I think you read what you feel, like what it evokes in you. Oh, the glare. But yeah, it is very expressive in that sense. What it expresses exactly is sometimes a mystery, so it's definitely unconventional. But I think that gives it so much room to like play, to not restrict or define yourself or like hold yourself to any particular like textbook meanings. But yeah, I think sometimes it might not be to everyone's taste. You know, the art style or like the imagery might not be everyone's cup of tea. And like I said, when I saw this, I'd only seen this card and I thought it was just a Magritte deck. And I was like, nah, I don't really like this card very much. I don't know, I think it's just the colors. I don't know, I like Magritte's work, but I don't like this card. So, yeah, this is a deck that I'm happy to work with. I'm happy to discover, to keep discovering and keep talking with, like conversing with and trying to decipher. I like it. I like that it's a challenge. Yeah, I don't know, I think it's great for really, really intuitive readings. Like, one card can mean one thing one day and then mean something completely different another day, depending on the reading. I actually like that. So, it's Freud. Yeah, that's the Surrealist Tarot. Definitely an unconventional deck for sure. Bit of an acquired taste. yeah, that is my matcha latte. Okay, so I stopped recording for a moment to see how long I'd been recording for, and it's been over an hour. Eek! So I'm gonna go turbo mode, and I'm just gonna fly through these. I'm not gonna give much of a, I'm not gonna elaborate as much. So even so, if you've stuck around, you're the real MVP. And stick around until the end, because I do actually have a extra additional deck, a little surprise. So yeah, stick around. So the next prompt is the hot chocolate, a deck that speaks to a younger version of yourself. So for that, I chose the Enchanted Tarot. I've shown this before, but it doesn't hurt to show it again. As I said, I have a really small collection, so, you know, it's gonna be repeats. Look at these backs. Yeah, so, you know, the kind of color-coded borders, and also this, specifically this style of like textile collage was very popular when I was a kid. I don't know, I just remember having like children's books with similar sort of collage styles. I remember having a very specific book, and I still can't, I wish I still had it. I wish I could find it, because there was just one particular artist whose illustration was featured in that book that I just kind of, I really need to find out who it is, because yeah, when I think of that style, I think of this. So when I see this deck, I think of that particular artist's illustrations, their collage. And yeah, the textiles, I mean, it's gorgeous. The colored borders, you know, I'm not a fan of the colored borders. If I could get the version without the colored borders, I'd be pretty happy, but for now I have this one, and you know, I'll deal. But it does remind me of my childhood. It's so gorgeous. It makes me happy. It makes my inner child happy. So that's the Enchanted Tarot. Yeah, okay. Speeding through these. Speedy. Okay, the Italian Soda, a deck that's fun, low-key, and not overly serious. So, the Morgan's Tarot. We all know and love the Morgan's Tarot. I was surprised to see that, you know, the videos I watched, no one else picked the Morgan's Tarot for this prompt. But, yeah, I thought this was quite, I love this deck, and I get it. You know, when I got it, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to read with it. I was just kind of like a gimmicky deck, but I can actually, when I somehow like get what I need to from these cards, like the messages, even, you know, the blank card. I kind of just intuitively get it, and it's fun. It doesn't take itself seriously. I mean, that's the whole point of this oracle. It's not a tarot, it's an oracle. But yeah, I just vibe with it. It's very hippie. It's very of its time, but it just resonates with me, and I don't know, I connect with it. I totally get it. Whatever message is supposed to come through at the time comes through. So yeah, the Morgan's Tarot. It's definitely the Italian soda for me. Great backs as well. Okay, and finally we have the herbal tea, a deck that takes things down a notch or helps you unwind. I'm sorry for showing this deck, but I couldn't think of any other decks that fit the bill for this. So the Majestic Earth. This is obviously a prize deck in my collection. And I'm not super precious about it, and I'm glad I'm not. But this really, it's just the landscapes, right? I was considering this one for the Cortado, because it is quite unbiased. Takes a quite a neutral approach to any question, really. But I thought I don't know, I thought maybe this might fit better for this prompt. It calms me. Even the scenes that are a little bit more turbulent, it just helps me disconnect. And as someone who doesn't get out much because I have agoraphobia, this deck is a godsend. It takes me to a happy place. It takes me to a safe place. I use this deck to meditate a lot. It gives great readings. But yeah, like, just great way to connect with nature without actually going out into nature, although that would be ideal for me. But when I saw this card, I thought it was a misprint, because it's in black and white, and it's kind of grainy. It looked kind of grainy, like the printer ran out of ink or something. But no, I've seen several walkthroughs and it's supposed to be like that, so yeah. It's beautiful. It really is. Yeah, again, I'm sorry for showing this deck because I know it's out of print and very, very hard to find. I actually got my girlfriend got this for me. So it was one of the like copies that she got me, like sometimes there'd be a sale and you could get factory seconds for much, much cheaper. So this is actually a factory second, and it apparently has like this means it has three flaws or something with it, and I honestly don't know what those flaws are. I can't tell. So recommendation for you, if subscribe to the publishing house, the publisher, I'll pop it up on the screen, and once in a while they might still have sales, and I'd just jump on them because you can get a factory second for relatively cheap, and that's what I did. That's what I had to do. I wouldn't recommend looking for it because it is exceedingly expensive. Even I'd seen people sell factory seconds for like over $100 euros, so it's not worth it. It's just like being patient, I guess, or I don't know, just being really, really lucky. And I'm really lucky to have this deck. I feel very fortunate. So yeah, I don't want to like drive anyone insane by showing them this. By showing you this, I don't want to drive anyone like crazy, because but it is what it is. This is definitely my herbal tea deck. Okay, and if you've stuck around, you're a real ride or die bitch, and I love you. Thank you. I'm gonna show one more deck that doesn't fit into any of the previous prompts, but it does fit into the general coffee house aesthetic. So I'm gonna pop some pictures up on the screen of what was called the global what was it? The Global Village Coffee House aesthetic. It's very, very popular, predominant in the late 80s, early 90s, well, throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And this is my Global Village Coffee House deck. It's the New Century Tarot. I don't really see this one. And it's beautiful, I think, in my opinion. It gives me, oh, it makes me so nostalgic. The Essential Coffee House deck. This is the kind of deck I'd pull out if I was, I don't know, at Starbucks or in like a smaller coffee shop. I'd pull this out for a quick reading. It's got the pips of feelings. It feels kind of theatrical as well because of like the backgrounds, how they're like set up. It feels very, let's see if I can find a major. Yeah, the Hanged Man. Yeah, this death card, oh my god. Yes, I love it. Look at it. So this is my coffee house, this is my ultimate coffee house deck. And if you stuck around, thank you. Let's play the game that other people, other tarot tubers do. If you've gotten through to the end, if you've made it all the way through, comments in the comments down below, try and incorporate the word death. Okay, I guess death. Include that in your comments somehow, or do a little like skull emoji or something. I don't know, because that might be a tricky one to incorporate into your comment. But yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.